Today's video, we're going to be going back and having a look at the NECA Toys God of War 3 Kratos Ghosts of Sparta. To figure out how tall God of War 3 Kratos is, let's go ahead and take a tape measure. The figure stands at almost 8 inches in height. Also, for a fun comparison, we'll move over God of War 3 Kratos, and we'll have a look at God of 4 Kratos, which just recently had a look at on this channel. It's a nice comparison between the two because they're a little bit more closer to scale, and of course they have a little bit more posability than the previously released, and I say previously released God of War figures, the ones that were released way back in like 2007. Also, we had a look on this channel recently. It seemed to be like a God of War kind of week, it seems, of reviews. But a nice comparison between both God of War 3 Kratos on your right and God of War Kratos on your left. For accessories, this guy gets some pretty cool ones actually. He gets his traditional Blades of Athena, not just one, but he also gets 2. And just a fun comparison. Try not to slide that one across the table. A fun comparison between that and these right here, the original Blades of Athena that came released with the God of War 2 Kratos way back when. In fact, I did do reviews of these, and you'll see the difference between the two right off the bat. The God of War 3 Kratos has the Blades of Athena with translucent orange plastic, whereas these ones right here were a solid plastic and then simply airbrushed a kind of golden yellow color around a otherwise yellow blade. While these do, I think, stand out a little bit better, I think I have to gravitate a little bit more towards the translucent plastic myself. It's just a shame that they're not as bright by comparisons. But you can see that the hilts, the skull hilts, there we are right there, are identical to one another. Everything about these two, if I line them up to one another, there we go. I think the blades are just a shy bit smaller, but they look like they are copies to one another. This one, of course, being a lot thicker than this one right here. This one would be more prone to breaking versus this one here. This one's a nice dense plastic. Just fun to show you guys how far along the Kratos figures have come from their original releases to what we get now. I even say now, I mean this particular release I think was 2016. So he gets 2 of these, which, as you could probably guess it, can fit easily into his hand. A little too easily, I might say. One of the problems I had with this figure, I'm not sure if I even mentioned it when I did the initial review of him, was that the blades are difficult, handle-wise, to get into his hands, but once you get them in his hands, they sit way too loose. They just kind of flop around. It's ironic for how much prying you have to do of the hands to get the blade handles in place, but then once they're there, you almost hope that he had a better grip to hold the blades a little bit better than what he does. You can have him displayed with those blades in hand, or what you can also do too, it's one of the only instances that a Kratos figure had this. You can flip the figure around and he's got a section on the back where you can have the 2 blades lined up in place like that. Probably a little bit better than what I just did, but you can have them actually in place like so on his back if you want to, say, display him without the blades, or for example if you want to display him with the Nemean Cestus. Cue the looks of those. These are awesome. Absolutely love these. They are hollow on the inside, so it's simply just a case of fitting them over his existing hands. And by virtue of the fact that they attach themselves, or they kind of friction attach themselves to the chains on his arms, it allows the figure to hold them perfectly fine. Ultimately, though, what ends up being the problem, though, is because these are so heavy, it makes his elbows very loose. In fact, I've already started to develop, not myself, but loose elbows on poor Kratos here. Based on the fact that these are included, I'd be more inclined to display them with these myself because, again, the detailing on these are fantastic. I love the dark gray. I seem to be a sucker when it comes to gray. Anything gray I seem to kind of move towards. In fact, I think gray kind of is one of my favorite colors, gray and blue. You can see all the cool little intricacies, these little scratches and stuff all over the heads of the two Nemean Cestus. Nemean Cestus. And you got some spikes on the side there. Don't worry, they're not prickly, not going to hurt you or anything like that. So I probably would be displaying him more so with these. Ultimately, though, it just means that I'm going to have to be mindful, probably not having his arms always extended outward, because ultimately that's going to cause more loosage. And I don't want loose elbows, more looser than they need to be. But it will cause these to be a little bit loose. One of the other things that I also added to the figure when you first get a packaging is that he has this extra plate on his arm that has to be attached. And it tells you exactly which way it has to go, because the front, as you can see, or the top portion of it, is a little rounder than the bottom, which is more squared off. So it tells you exactly which way it has to face. And it's rubber, so it just kind of snaps into place. And it doesn't seem to limit any sort of his posability. You can still bend the arm. You can't really rotate the arm anyways, but I guess it makes things even more difficult. You can rotate it to about there. It doesn't really rotate all that much. And then he also has an interchangeable head. One a little bit more angrier, you could say, than the other one here. I do really like both head sculpts. This one seems almost a little too calm for my liking, at least for Kratos. So I think I'd be more gravitating towards the angrier face. The NECA Kratos figures has certainly come a long way. Actually, I'm going to take the blades out of his... Yeah, until I drop one. They've come a long way from where they originally started. I think for a fun follow-up video, I may have a look at all the God of War figures ever released, or at least the ones I've collected, which I think are all ever released from the folks over at NECA. So you guys can see the difference between all of them. So, talking about this face and overall just the body, the execution on this figure is done exceptionally well. If we had the comparison, which I might actually just wait, I think I'll wait to do a comparison video after the fact. But comparing these to the original figures were, if anything, try not to look at them with rose-colored glasses all the time. They were a little on the pasty side. It looked like you took a gray figure and just kind of splotched a white paint over top of it. So that it did look a little mucky versus what we get right here, which is kind of, you still get the brushing, you get the wash of the white over top of the darker figure. In fact, you can kind of see where the plastic of what the color of the figure should be. Looks like it's probably this gray color, and then they just washed over top of it. But the effect gives you a much more chalkier exterior to Kratos, which I think makes more sense, and it definitely looks better on this particular figure than the later released or the previously released figure. Now, really, if you compare it to, say, let's bring him in again, the God of War 4 Kratos, his paint, he's got a much cakier, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but his skin tone, or the ashes on his skin, is a much richer white versus the God of War 3 Kratos, which you can see is a little bit paler. It not necessarily always successful, because up here it's a light more dusting of white. As you get down to the legs, though, it looks like it's a little bit heavier in contrast. But again, the face sculpt is glorious on this. Love the angry expression on his face. His eyes are perfect. I would dare say, obviously for the fact that it's God of War 3 Kratos, but if you want like a definitive Kratos of his original looks, this would be the figure I would recommend versus, say, the original God of War 2 figures. Those figures were good, granted, but this one's got lots more posability to it, and I think overall he just is the most well-rounded release of a Kratos figure. You can see also one of the things that I like about this, well, You can see one thing about the figure, and let me also add to it, the one thing I like about the figure, just because you can't read my mind, or can you? Yes, that is correct. I do want that. The skirt, as you can see, kind of blows off, billows off, flows off to the side there. It still has the deco that one would become famous with Kratos. Fortunately, I got a little bit of paint right there. Well, something I could probably scratch away. A little bit of extra paint there on the side. But other than that, I mean, it looks really good. He's got the chains on the arms. That's a carryover from pretty much all Kratos figures, except for, I guess, the Ares armor, I guess, had that as well. The gold on the back holster, if you want to call it a holster, or like an open hilt of the to where the chain, the actual blades go, and then you've got some nice glorious gold there on the shoulders. The shoulders could probably afford a little bit of a darker wash to it, so it just doesn't look as pristine. But they managed to add a little bit extra blood there to it, so it's not 100% pristine. Again, there's the back of the skirt. You've also got now the boots of Hermes, which is also something that carried over to the God of War 3 Kratos versus the original releases. He's a much chunkier looking Kratos. I suppose that could be one nitpick, that he does feel a little short, a little squatty versus the God of War 2 Kratos that we had a look at before. Those are a lankier looking Kratos. That's about the only thing I would say about this particular figure. He does feel a little stocky, a little thick, a little wide, but other than that, he's really a great looking figure. Posability on this guy: his head rotates all the way around. You also have the hinge up and down. Shoulders hinge outward. The shoulder pad, by the way, is a soft rubber, so it's not really going to get in the way for you. And the arms rotate all the way around. You got to be careful though, because it's going to clip this part right here of the shoulder. As soon as you start rotating, it's going to start wanting to catch itself on there. So maybe I would advise not moving the arm as far up as you would want it to be. Again, you got the bicep swivel. Got the double hinge. Let me just show you here. The double hinge on the elbow. There's the hinge there. There's a hinge there. That gives us a double hinge happening. And then he's also got the rotation and hinge in the hands. Upper torso crunch. Also a waist swivel, and because this is a newer released Kratos, unlike the earlier ones that we've looked at on this channel, he has the split cut on the thighs, or he has a splits on the legs, and then he also has the cut on the thigh, but it's actually further up. It's not normally it would be here. It's actually a little bit further on the figure here, so it's up at the top. Double hinge on the knee. Nothing in the actual boots of Hermes, and then you've got the hinge on the foot. Ankle rocker, and he's also got the hinge on the feet there, on the four toes, or big toe and four toes. That gives us 5. Also, this one here as well doesn't have the problem that the earlier released NECA God of War figures have, where there was a pin that went right through, connecting the foot to the lower half, the lower calf area of his boot. All around, again, a really great looking figure. The biggest problem with a figure like this and the amount of accessories that NECA includes for him is really how exactly are you going to pose this figure, and what are you going to pose him with? Of all the Kratos figures that I have in my collection, the Ghost of Sparta Kratos is one of my all-time favorites. Not only do you get the benefits of the additional articulation, which unfortunately was forfeited just by sheer virtue of the fact that it was an older toy in the original God of War 2 releases of Kratos. This one really does have the benefit of the additional posability, which doesn't always work to your favor, because once you start putting the Nemean Cestus onto his hands, it does make for the figure to be very top-heavy, and ultimately those joints, if you start developing any bit of a loose joints in the legs specifically, he does have a tough time standing. In fact, for final looks, I've kind of cheated and I'm making use of one of the display stands. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's attached to the foot of Kratos just so I can get him to stand upright. Other than the fact that the Nemean Cestus do make the figure a little bit top heavy, I really do like the overall execution. And again, this is one of my all-time favorite Kratos figures. Today we were having a look and going back and revisiting the NECA toys. This was God of War 3, Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. And if you maybe hadn't had a chance yet to go back and have a look at my re-released or re-reviews of the God of War 2 Kratos figures, they're probably going to be a couple of videos back, or rest assured, there's going to be a playlist that you guys can go and check out. That's basically just going to say the Kratos or maybe God of War reviews. You guys can go in there and check those out if you want as well. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. Just before I go, I know you guys can go at any minute. One thing also in final looks that I did do, in case somebody had mentioned in the comments section down below, is the removable plate. Good thing I remembered. The removable plate coming up to the arm right here, I did remove back out. And one of the reasons why it also is a removable piece is so that you can get the Nemean Cestus further up onto his arm. Just want to also throw that into the review, just in case somebody was wondering. As always, guys, thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time.